The Miami Heat are just coming off an incredible bubble performance, an incredible playoff run where game after game, series after series, they proved a lot of people wrong. Everyone just expected them to drop off at some point in time, but they dominated all the way through to the playoffs and then all the way through to the finals, proved themselves in the finals. Despite having injuries to two of their three best players, they managed to steal 2 games and be very competitive against a Lakers team that managed to beat every opponent in 5 games leading into the finals, and then an injured and wounded Heat team took them to 6. Now, don't get it twisted, everyone was shocked by this team because they were good in the regular season, they were surprising in the regular season as well, but the one we saw in the playoffs is completely different to the one we saw in the regular season. It's a different team. I think that's what shocked people the most because they can't get their heads around it. It's completely different circumstances, completely unique circumstances that we'll probably never see again. So that's why it's so surprising that this team was so much better than they were in the regular season. And it's because guys like Tyler Herro had 3 or so months to get better. Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, all these guys got better because they're young players playing in their first few years. And then you give them effectively another offseason. This is the kind of jump you would have expected to see from Tyler Herro heading into his second year, which effectively it was in the playoffs in a way. And then Bam Adebayo got another preseason. Jimmy Butler got healthier. Duncan Robinson just got more comfortable, even though he's already pretty comfortable knocking down threes. You get the point. They were just a different team. And because of how many young players they had, it helped them more than a lot of other teams. We saw it with the Nuggets as well. These are the kind of teams that benefited from the hiatus, and it was good to see the Heat surprise a lot of people. So with that in mind, heading into next year, Miami should just be seen as one of the best teams in the league. This shouldn't be seen as a hot streak or they just played at the right time, which I think most people recognize, but not everyone does. They should be seen as one of the best teams in the league, a team that made it all the way to the finals and then took the Lakers to 6 despite being injured. Now quickly before I go any further, if you could drop a like right now, that would be much appreciated. Also sub to the channel. I make content pretty much daily at this point in time. You might enjoy some of my other videos, you might not. Subbing anyways, it helps, it's free, and I'd suggest you do it. I don't know what else to say. Anyways, that would be much appreciated if you do both of those things because it really helps out a lot, and it takes quite a lot of time to make all of these videos. Anyways, let's get back into it. Now, there's been a lot made of the Heat's cap space and the potential for them to lure in one of the big 2021 free agents. Let's be honest, Giannis is the one they're looking after in 2021. They could make a big move as soon as this year that I think helps their team out significantly. Danillo Gallinari was quoted saying he was more interested in winning than getting paid, and although Gallinari is not in the same tier as Giannis, obviously I don't need to tell you that, they don't need to sacrifice anything going forward to potentially bring in one of the best stretch fours in the league, which is Gallinari. The Heat can not only entice him by the prospect of joining one of the best teams in the league, but he fills a position of need. He knows he's going to be used, he knows he's going to be a starter, and they could probably offer him at around $9 million at the mid-level, I'd suggest, depending on who they sign and who they don't, but around $9 million probably seems around the mark. Now, they did pass up the option of signing him earlier in the year because they didn't want to part way with a future pick, and I'm sure they did this knowing that they would have a chance to sign him next year heading into free agency. Otherwise, I think they would have taken the chance if they didn't think that was a genuine option. Now, Gallinari would be such a good upgrade, such a good addition, because one thing they struggled with against the Lakers was stretching out the floor and being able to handle the size inside at the same time. Anthony Davis was able to feast on the boards because he didn't have to worry about Bam or even Iguodala or whoever else was at the 4 at times stretching the floor. But if you can get Gallinari at the 4, it eliminates the possibility of playing 2 inside bigs on the floor at the same time. There's no chance a team like the Lakers can play Howard and AD at the same time if you've got Gallinari, because he's going to take you off the dribble. He's going to hit shots from outside. He's just a sniper in general. This is a guy that averaged 20 points per game on over 43% from 3 in his time in LA and was a huge reason for the Clippers overachieving, and then went to OKC and averaged 19 points a game on over 40% from 3 and was another big part of an overachieving team. In fact, there's a bit of a trend here with Gallinari's career. Teams generally do pretty well when he's healthy and performing. You can even look back to when he was with the Nuggets, another team that people thought overachieved. It's maybe they underrate Gallinari, or maybe it's just the pieces around him. I don't think it's a coincidence that when he has his best years, the team does well, because he's just such a good player to have in your team because of his ability to stretch the floor and just do a lot of things offensively, and he's not a liability on defense. That's obviously not his strong suit, but he can fit in enough. When you've got Bam next to him, Jimmy Butler, you got defenders like the Heat do, he's going to be fine in that way. Gallinari's just the perfect fit stylistically and financially. Obviously, you're going to have to hope that he lives up to his word and doesn't take a 3 or 4 year deal from the Knicks or someone who offer him 60 to 70 million over those 4 years, which I'm sure some team will be interested in doing, and he actually goes to try and play for a contender, which the Heat clearly are. Gallinari aside, what else can we expect from Miami next year, and what's going to help them take the next step. Because as good as they were, there's obviously still room for improvement. That's with every team. And it's hard to get a clear read, because one thing I thought Miami struggled with against the Lakers was the lack of a creator who could penetrate and score, but also create for others. This was obviously in the few games Jimmy wasn't taking over, but then they have exactly that kind of guy in Dragic. He just happened to be injured, so it's hard to really tell. I imagine he would have been great in the finals like he was throughout all the playoffs, so we can assume if they manage to get Dragic back, which is a big if, because there's going to be teams looking to offer him a 2 to 3 year deal. There's teams that will be interested in his services. There's teams that will pay more than the Heat can pay going forward and can give him a bit more security, but they have to bank on maybe Dragic being loyal to the organization and Dragic being keen on getting back to the finals, a final series which he unfortunately pretty much missed out on completely. So that's what they have to hope, and I'd still probably be confident Dragic comes back. He seems to really love the Heat organization, and they're still going to give him a decent deal, and he knows this is a chance for him to win a championship. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him come back, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see him leave. Really up in the air. It's a 50-50 kind of thing, maybe 60-40 Heat's way. But outside of external players like Gallinari, a lot of Miami's development, most of Miami's development is going to continue to come from Herro, Bam, Nunn, and Robinson, who's a bit older, but he's only in his second year, and he's just going to continue to get more comfortable. In my opinion, Bam's the key to this team becoming even better next year. When he was dominating in the Eastern Conference Finals, granted it was against Tice, who's a solid center, but yeah, obviously no AD or Joel Embiid or those kind of guys. He just looked genuinely terrific. He looked like a guard the way he was getting to the rim, drawing contact, particularly game 6 where he put up 32 and 14, got to the free throw line, was hitting mid-range jumpers, and then you add to this the ability to pass out of the post to open shooters. I think Bam was seriously suffering the effects of an injury. That's the only way I can say he disappointed that much. You can't say someone goes from being the best player in an Eastern Conference Final series against Jimmy Butler and Jason Tatum to being a liability at times against the Lakers. Sure, Anthony Davis is a hard matchup for anyone, but yeah, no, he just didn't look right. Particularly he couldn't finish, really. Let's be honest. He wasn't finishing offensively. He wasn't finishing his layup. He wasn't finishing his dunks, and then he just didn't look as explosive getting to the rim. But I'm so adamant Bam's going to be so much better next year is because he went from a promising player last year to an all-star this year, and then in the playoffs, he went from an all-star to someone who looked like a top 10 to 15 player in the league. You could say even higher. So I wouldn't be surprised if he made another jump next year and turns into the Heat's leading scorer and bona fide best player. I know Jimmy Butler had such a good final series, and everyone remembers that, but before that, it was all Bam Adebayo all throughout the playoffs. He was clearly their best player, and he was one of the best players in the whole playoffs prior to the finals where he got injured. He just didn't look the same. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him even better next year. They run plays through him. He might have a turnaround jump shot, which he showed against the Celtics, more of a mid-range shot, which he was showing. He's got defensive player of the year potential. This is someone who genuinely has the sky is the limit. I know that's a cliche, but you could easily see him being a top 5 to 10 player in the league in the next 1 to 3 years. He's got all the attributes to be a center that just guards every position, a center that can make mid-range shots, get to the rim, get fouls, pass out of double teams, do everything that you want, and there's every chance that they build the offense around him next year and they look to him as their best player from the get-go. The other huge developer in the bubble was Tyler Herro, and he started to have a lot more responsibility as a ball handler and shot creator, and I expect him to continue to be handed more of the keys to the offense going forward. It's going to be interesting to see if they continue to start him when Dragic comes back, if he comes back. Now, I struggle to see how they won't, particularly during the regular season. If he can show the kind of growth he showed from the regular season to this year's playoffs, then he could be a 20-5 kind of guy as soon as next year. That's exactly what he was against Boston, and that's one of the best teams, one of the best defenses in the league, where you were facing guys like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, and he's putting up 20-5, 37 points in games. He had 20 consecutive double-digit games, I believe. Yeah, he's someone that's going to at the very least average 15 to 18 points a game, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him make that D-Book kind of jump. Someone he's been compared to. D-Book went from 13 points a game to 22 in his second year, and maybe Herro makes that same jump and goes from 13 to 20, 22 points. If he can do that, which I wouldn't be surprised. We saw it with sophomores last year. People think it might be a stretch. Luka Doncic turned into an all-NBA player. SGA turned into an all-star level player-ish, just below that caliber, and Trae Young turned into an all-star. These are all guys that you wouldn't have expected to have these kind of jumps. So to think Tyler Herro's not going to have a similar jump after being so good in the playoffs, yeah, I think he's going to be pretty good. In terms of a few housekeeping things, Kelly Olynyk's likely going to opt into his $12 million deal. Jay Crowder's probably going to explore his options, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a multi-year deal somewhere else, because the Heat just aren't going to be offering anyone a multi-year deal with 2021 looming. So there's a possibility he's going to be on his way out the door unless he's really keen on the culture and he's really keen on running it back, which I mean he might be. Maya Meyers Leonard might also be on his way out. He's another unrestricted free agent. And this leads me to my next point. I think the Heat need to bring in another couple of guys, another guy that can really guard in the paint, that can provide a bit more of an inside presence, which they didn't really have. And someone like Tristan Thompson, who's actually a good player. Like, he was overpaid on his last contract, and you're not going to give him anywhere upwards of $10 million a year. But as someone who's on a decent contract, he's a solid player with championship experience, remember that? So yeah, he'd be a decent option. And then someone I've mentioned for every contender is Aaron Baines, and then maybe a potential wing or two like Justin Holiday or DeAnthony Melton, who can guard multiple positions. Justin Holiday's a knockdown three-point shooter. These are guys that are going to be on the market, and it just depends what a lot of these players have in mind. Do they want to go to a contender like Miami, or do they want to chase the bag somewhere else? It's hard to tell at this stage, but these are all guys that I wouldn't be surprised to see one or two of them join the Heat and just make them a better team than they were before. Miami's just not going to do anything crazy this offseason, but if they can get Gallinari on a one-year deal and keep Dragic, that's a success. It's that simple. Then a few things like maybe getting a 3-and-D wing or getting an inside big or getting both, that would be another success. That'd be something else they'd be looking to do. I mean, this is a team that made the finals, and you have the potential to add one of the most potent stretch fours in the league. Yeah, like they're going to be a scary proposition going into next year when you have guys like Bam and Herro who can make huge jumps as well. There's just so many ingredients for external and internal development as soon as next year, and I'm not even talking about the possibility of them getting Giannis in 2021, which we're not going to talk about at this stage in time, unless Milwaukee make a big move, unless KD comes back to full health, the Raptors, the Celtics, unless any of these teams make big moves. The Heat would be my favorites to come out of the East again, because they've got the culture, they've got the coaching, and they've got more room for development, more room for upside than any of these other teams. That's my opinion anyway. That's what I think the Heat should do. That's what I think the Heat are going to look like next year. If you did enjoy the video, a like would be greatly appreciated. Trying to make this type of content daily, as I've said. Subscribe to the channel, trying to hit 10K by the end of the year, and all the subscriptions really help out. It's free to do. It helps out a lot. Thanks anyways. I'll catch you next time. Have a good day.